Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I wish it was my pleasure to rise to speak on this, the State Taxation Amendment Bill today. But it's anything but, because these increased taxes and cuts to important services and infrastructure are really going to hit every single Victorian household. They really are. Now, there is a few things that in particular are going to hit regional and rural communities in particular that I wanted to talk about. And I know that I often say I'll be brief, and I'll try to keep it brief because I'd like a few more of our side of the House to get up and have their say today, even though we've only got a little bit of time left. I wanted to start with the increase to the waste management levy. Now, as a former councillor and mayor, this is something that I've had to deal with firsthand, but I've reached out to I have 4 councils in my electorate, in the 37,500 square kilometres that is the Mildura electorate. There are 4 councils. And I've reached out to a few of those because I know how this is going to hit not only them and their ability to provide service, but it ends up as a separate line on the rates notice, and the council's going to get the blame for that, as well as the fire services levy, which we'll get to. But I have a couple of statements here that I think is important to get on the record from these councils, so I thought I'd take time to do that today. The Mildura Rural City Council, which is obviously the largest council in my electorate, they say that an increase in the waste levy for the 25-26 year of 30% is a significant burden on regional and rural communities. This will directly impact the cost of living for everyone. Waste services is, for the most part, an essential service. That's the Mildura Rural City Council. Now, they don't just do the township of Mildura, remembering that they deliver waste management services to as far as Murrayville, which is at the South Australian border, that Mallee track. This really impacts, we have to think about this differently, because it's fine for inner city and regional outer suburban areas of this state, but once we are talking about outback Victoria, which is what we are, it is a real burden, and it is one that small rural and regional councils just cannot wear any more state government cost shifting. The Swan Hill Rural City Council say, and I quote, "The fire services levy and the waste management levy will hurt ratepayers and ultimately renters. State government taxes that get put on the rates notice, so council gets the blame. Waste levies are just another tax grab that again councils get the blame for, increasing rates and charges outside the rate cap. If the government was investing more in recycling and circular economies in rural and regional areas, we could swallow it, but they're not." That comes from the Swan Hill Rural City Council, which takes in areas like Robinvale in my electorate. And while we're on the fire services levy, there was, and there has been, an issue, and I'm sure in all regional areas and rural areas in particular, with investment in appliances so that fire brigades can do their job. We had an issue in Merbeen actually last week where the 14-year-old pumper that belongs to the FRV Station 72 had just returned after being repaired for quite some time, and on its way to a grass fire, had a significant malfunction and ended up broken down on the side of the road. Now, this is something I've raised a few times, so let's hope that some of those fire services levies actually get to the stations and the brigades that need them, like the CFA stations out in rural communities as well, which they've been absolutely gutted, and they are the backbone of rural communities. You don't have the CFA in those small communities. That's where everyone goes together. They're all volunteers, and they feel like they are just overlooked. Well, they're certainly not underestimated by the people that rely on them, because they do a power of work, and they are incredible people. But obviously, with things like this and not getting the investment they deserve, they feel neglected, they're frustrated. And given how long it takes now and how difficult it is to get new members, because they are volunteers, they're even more frustrated. And this is something I share. Now, lastly, I wanted to talk about the amount of investment that's been taken out of family violence. $29 million, I think it is. And I spoke about earlier how the current investment is not hitting the ground in regional communities where it really needs to be. The need for it is desperate. We're at crisis point, and more lives will be lost if it doesn't start to funnel down. But with a significant cut like that $29 million, I have little faith that anything is actually going to change. I mean, we could talk about the state tax amendment bill for a long time. We could talk about payroll, and I've noticed some members speak about property. Let's not talk about land tax, actually. Let's talk about that for a minute. Oh, the land tax. Now, I was on the phone to more real estate agents during the week and the member for Kew mentioned it. She mentioned that rental properties are being listed in record numbers to be put on the market. So renters that are in these properties are being evicted. I had another notice from someone yesterday, another email from someone yesterday saying that her daughter is being evicted because the owner needs to sell that property because of land tax and all of the other difficulties that come with being a landlord these days or owning more than one property. And it's been said multiple times before, the member for Kew mentioned it earlier, that solving the housing crisis relies on the private sector. They're the ones that own the rental properties. We need landlords. They're not the devil. I know they get painted to be in this place all the time. Landlords are not the devil. Landlords are the ones that are actually going to house renters. Why on earth you would disincentivise people to own second or third properties, fourth or 15 houses that they rent out long term and don't put on the short stay market is absolutely beyond me. Why on earth would you do that? Particularly when the talk of the big build and creating more public and social housing is just never going to happen, let's be honest. What we should actually be doing to solve the housing crisis is incentivising landlords and incentivising the mum and dad investors who might own one extra property to help with their retirement, to help with a little bit of extra income, if they can even get it at the moment, because with the land tax and everything else that they have to pay, if they're not making money out of it, is it any wonder they're putting them on the market? So this is it's just incredible, and there's a reason why vacancy rates are so low, and that is because renters are being evicted out of these properties at an enormous rate so that they can be sold. So when we talk about why we would oppose these taxes, common sense. It's pretty simple. It's common sense, and common sense should prevail.